Hello and welcome to a tape from the Attitude series by Bert Weir. Bert Weir is a really interesting Australian with lots of up-to-date practical solutions to modern management dilemmas. Bert specialises in putting complex ideas into practical, down-to-earth language. You are in good company with this video. Bert Weir's other clients are a who's who of Australian business and include BHP Utah, AMP, Australia Post, Film Australia and many government departments, including the Police, Defence and Tax Department. He's a regular guest on television and radio shows. Bert's book, You Were Born Special, Beautiful and Wonderful, What Happened, is an important addition to the world's knowledge on self-esteem. This new Attitude series is an exciting opportunity for Bert Weir to share his extensive knowledge to help you and your people become more successful.
If you have a burning desire to be successful and an unshakable faith in yourself, I'm sure that you would agree that you would achieve more than you have in the past. See, in one of the courses I teach, a self-esteem course, I ask people to write down those things that I could do better if I had more self-esteem. When I do that, I find people have put down some pretty remarkable things. And then I say to them, what you're really saying is, I know how to do it. The only reason I haven't done it is that I haven't got belief in myself. I haven't got enough self-esteem to be able to go forward. And then I say to them, well, since you know how to do it, the only thing that's stopping you is the fact that you simply haven't made the effort. You see, most of us have the belief that the successful people in the world are people who've got some special talent or special knowledge or special ability. In fact, it isn't so at all. People who are successful are rarely brilliant. They're just ordinary people like you and I who go out and do the things that they're able to do. And even if they make mistakes in the process of learning it, go out and keep doing it until they get the results. I'm sure if any of you have ever gone back to a school reunion after, say, 10 or 20 years, it will often you'll discover that many of the people who have been successful are not the ones who are the best scholars. In fact, it frequently works the other way, that many of the really best scholars tend to get themselves into a nice, safe, comfortable job rather than go out and take the risks. The risk of being wrong, the risk of making mistakes, the risk of being disapproved of. So how do you actually go about achieving the results you want? Well, first of all, decide what you actually want rather than what you don't want. For example, if you've got a weight problem, instead of deciding you don't want to be fat, decide you want to be slim. If you have a financial problem, instead of deciding you don't want to be broke, decide how much money you want. If you have a conflict situation in your relationship, instead of deciding that you don't want the conflict, decide that you want to have a loving relationship. In other words, decide what you do want rather than what you don't want. The next thing is to have an action plan. Work out exactly how you're going to carry out the project you're looking forward to. Go to a great deal of trouble to set it up. You might need to look back on your past successes. You may need to get advice, you may need to get information, you may need to get help. But whatever you do, go to a lot of trouble to make up a plan that you can believe in. It should be something that you have so confident in that if you knew that if you carried it out, it must work. In which case, of course, you're more likely to persist if you've got a plan that you really believe in. And it's important that you really believe in it, because if you do, it's more likely to be something you'll persevere with. Now, having got an action plan, the next thing is to create an attitude plan. Now, attitude is largely concerned with our thought processes. But suppose now, instead of using the word thoughts, let's consider the possibility of changing the word slightly and referring it to self-talk. In other words, let's think in terms of the fact that we talk to ourselves in our own head. Now, I became aware of this some time ago when I was very unfit, and I decided I should start jogging. And I created a plan to start at 6 o'clock on Monday morning. Set the alarm, 6 o'clock I woke, and the first thought that went through my head, today is not a good day to start. So here I am lying in bed, and it seems as though I've got two voices talking to me. One voice was telling me all the reasons I should get up and go jogging, and the other one telling me all the reasons I should stay where I am. One was a negative voice and one was a positive voice. I called one Mr. Positive and the other one Mr. Negative. I was amazed at the ingenuity of Mr. Negative. As a matter of fact, I was going round the park, and as I'm doing it, it seemed as though Mr. Negative was saying to me, you see all those houses around there, there are people in there, they're all laughing at you. And as I became more and more aware of my negative self-talk, I began to realise just how much power it had had on influencing my life from there on. So I suggest, and the interesting thing is when I tell other people about it, they say, it's interesting you told me that, because I thought I might be a little crazy because I've had these two voices in my head. So recognise that every one of us has a positive and a negative self-talk going on in our heads. Now let's suppose now that you have a project and you've got a coach. And this coach is telling you all the reasons why you should be successful. They're encouraging, they're giving you support, they're giving you all sorts of reasons why you should expect to be successful. In which case, I think you'll agree, it's a rather nice way to look forward to being successful. But suppose you say to yourself, okay, can't I be my own coach? Can't I tell myself in my own head all the reasons I should be successful? Can't I tell myself, yes, all I've got to do is follow this action plan and it will work? So recognise the fact that you have these voices, your self-talk, and recognise too that you have the power to create your own coach. And this coach is telling you, go for it. You can make it. The next thing is make sure you're aware of the people you're mixing with. If you're mixing with positive people, positive seems normal. But if you mix with negative people, if you don't watch yourself, you'll find yourself doing exactly what they do. I was asked to go out and give a lecture to one of the trade associations. When I got there, I was amazed to discover that 3 or 4 of the most successful people in the trade association were not there, and I was surprised. So I rang one of them the next day and said, I didn't see you at the trade association last night. He said, oh no, he said, and he mentioned his other successful people, we don't go anymore. He said, as soon as the business had a downturn, most of the members there spent all of their time complaining about how bad business was and how difficult it was. So we have our own meeting. The successful ones like myself, we get together and work out ways to make it work in the new circumstance. There was another time I was talking to a man in a shopping centre, and I said to him, how's business? He said, it's terrible. I said, what do you do when business is terrible? He said, I go around and ask all the other people in the shopping centre how business is. I said, what happens if they say business is bad? He said, well, that's all right. You see, what happens when you decide business is bad and you just accept that, well, that means you are already accepting failure. And of course, negative people will keep talking about failure all the time. I remember one fellow who I was talking to said, don't be too tough on me that I'm not doing so well now, because he said I was a failure in the boom. And there are people who do fail in the boom, simply because their attitudes. So the next thing is recognise no matter what you do, there's always a situation when something will go wrong. You could lose a good customer. You could fail in the examination. Something you set out to do doesn't work. But if you can turn every one of those things into learning experiences, sometimes these can be blessings in disguise. For example, let's suppose you lose a good customer. And then you say to yourself, how did I lose that good customer? What was that went wrong? And if you can learn the lesson from it and correct it, and then use that experience to look after your existing customers better, it means having lost that customer could sometimes be the best thing that ever happened to you. Again, suppose you're studying for an examination and you don't do enough work to pass and you fail. Failing the examination could be the best thing that ever happened to you if you get the message that if you want to be successful, you simply have to do the work. There was a time I called on the state manager of one of the wine companies many years ago when I was a cub salesman. And I made a dreadful presentation and he practically threw me out the door. And I went back to the sales manager and I told him about all the mistakes I thought I'd made. And he told me about another dozen I hadn't even thought of. But you see, that sales presentation was probably the most valuable I've ever made because I learnt so many lessons from it. So if you can learn lessons from every time something goes wrong and use those opportunities as learning experiences, it means you keep improving even when things do go wrong. And of course, the important thing is to recognize we're living in a world that's changing rapidly. Circumstances are changed. Your competitors are getting better. The customers' demands are greater. So if you're not changing and adapting to the new situations, you're being left behind. You cannot stand still. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. In very simple terms, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So the simple process is this. If you want to be successful, first of all, you decide what you want to do. Get a very clear picture in your mind of what you want. Create an action plan that you can believe in. Go to a lot of trouble to set it up so that you believe in it totally, something you really believe in. And then when you really believe in it, you're more likely to persevere. Create an attitude plan. Recognize the need to maintain a positive mental attitude. Listen to your self-talk. Become your own coach. Keep telling yourself all the reasons why you can do things. Mix with positive people. Recognize the fact that positive people can help you to feel good and help you to feel optimistic and help you to expect to be successful. Keep away from the negatives. They'll try to drag you down. And when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, use these situations as learning experiences. Recognize that every opportunity that comes to you, if you learn from it, it can be a blessing in disguise. And recognize the need to get better, recognize the need to change, recognize the need to adapt. But most of all, in the long run, never give up. Hang in, keep going. If you keep going, you'll make it. Remember, never give in.